Investigations have been started or advanced against a number of Trump's perceived enemies. Plus, there's been the continued rewriting of the events around January 6th. As the New York Times' Glenn Thrush describes it, quote, by firing Attorney General Pam Bondi and then conspicuously declining to name her interim replacement, Todd Blanche, as the permanent successor, Trump has created an environment in which multiple officials seem to all be fighting for their jobs. According to current and former officials, the result is ever greater incentive to execute his increasingly extreme demands without much pushback. Joining us to talk about this and more, Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland. He's the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee and a constitutional expert. So, sir, when you look, and we've talked to you about this, I guess, for a year plus at this point, on a year here, on the DOJ and what's happening. I know you have a lot to say about that, yeah. but I'm more curious what you think post-DOJ reforms might actually look like. What you and your party should do post this DOJ.
We need a sweeping de-Trumpification of the Department of Justice. There are huge parts of the DOJ that have just been dismantled. I mean, for example, when they started off, they said they're no longer going to enforce the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. They've stopped monitoring foreign subversion of American elections. In other words, they want to facilitate all of that. The Pardon Office was dismantled so it could become a totally political operation run out of the White House and Donald Trump's brain and, you know, the political operatives. So we need to reestablish the basic functions of the office, and then we need to we have to go after all of the corruption that pervades the Department of Justice and the rest of the government. So that's a huge task. I mean, that's the work of a generation. That's not going to happen in 3 months or 6 months when we get the House, the Senate, and the White House back. But that's where we're headed. We need to de-Trumpify this government and restore it as an instrument for the common good and for American constitutional democracy rather than the private self-enrichment of one guy and his family.
Well, Congressman, on this point of de-Trumpifying the government, there are some folks within your party there in the House who, if you do take back, particularly the House and the Senate, want to impeach President Trump. And Leader Jeffries, this was last Sunday, says Trump impeachment not a top priority if Dems win the House majority. You know, I'm inclined to agree that should not be the top priority of Democrats. I'm just wondering if they retake the majority. I'm just wondering, are you of the same view? If not, why not?
Well, of course, the Republicans would love nothing more, given how desperate they are and how the president's numbers are sinking like a stone, than to have Democrats talking about just impeaching the president as if the problem were this one guy. Our problem isn't Trump anymore. Our problem is Trumpism and the whole MAGA domination of the government and the conversion of the government into an instrument of money-making and profit-taking for the corporations and the people who surround Donald Trump. So I'm totally with Hakeem Jeffries. That's not what we need to be talking about right now. We know that there are no Republicans in the House or the Senate who are with us. We can identify and articulate all of the almost daily impeachable offenses that are taking place. But that doesn't mean that's where we're spending our time. We're trying to defend the rule of law the best that we can. We are trying to get the resources of the people to the people and away from the Trump machinery of corruption as much as possible. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't make sense to talk about something right now that we couldn't accomplish because obviously the Republicans control the House and the Senate. So I think I would agree with him that is a diversion right now.
Mm-hmm. And Congressman, you know, Trump's vengeance tour is something that he has campaigned on now since 2015, and even after the election. His rallying cry, lock her up, in reference to Hillary Clinton. What you're talking about the need to de-Trumpify the federal government and seek accountability and try to recalibrate the Justice Department. Those are much more sophisticated terms than something like lock her up. Do you think Democrats would be better served to using more aggressive, straightforward, partisan language akin to what the kind of language that the president has utilized and that has been popular amongst constituents, at least in the Republican Party? Or is that not what Democrats want?
Well, look, we're winning all over the country. I mean, we're winning in Virginia, we're winning in New Jersey, we're winning in California, we're winning in Texas. We are in a mass movement to reclaim American government and to defend and rehabilitate our Constitution against these people. And this is an effort that involves everybody. That's why it's far more sweeping than just thinking about one person who's been engaged in obvious criminality against our against our Constitution and against our government. So that's why this is going to be work that takes many years. I mean, they destroyed the Department of Education. They've destroyed the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau mostly. They've certainly destroyed the Agency for International Development. They have neutered and redirected and thwarted dozens of federal laws. And so, we have to be doing everything in our power to try to recapture the momentum. And right now, that means we've got to win Congress back. And that's why, I'm spending pretty much every